I tried to discipline the human by force. She reminded me her species survived a planet designed to kill them. I am not going to sugarcoat this. When I first saw the humans arrive at Intergalactic Trade Station Omega-7, I laughed. Actually laughed. Right there in the docking bay, watching them shuffle off their transport vessel like a bunch of lost hatchlings. They were small, soft-looking, and moved with this weird, bouncy gait that made them look perpetually off balance. I remember thinking, these are the species that supposedly conquered their entire solar system, these fragile little things. My name is Vextor, and I am, or rather was, a supervisor in the Cargo Coordination Division. Mid-level management, decent pay, better benefits. I am Krovaxi, which means I stand roughly 8 feet tall when I am not even trying to impress anyone. My exoskeleton can deflect most small arms fire. My natural strength allows me to lift approximately 4 times my body weight, and my species has maintained dominance in our sector for the past 6 centuries through superior physical power and unwavering discipline. We do not ask. We do not suggest. We enforce. The hierarchy is everything to us. You know your place. You respect those above you. You demand respect from those below you. Simple, effective. The way civilized species should operate. So when the human delegation arrived assigned to work in cross-species logistics coordination, I did not exactly roll out the welcome mats. The station administrator, a weak-spined Palaxian named Shremik, had insisted we needed human expertise in supply chain optimization. Apparently they had revolutionized trade routes in their sector. Great. Wonderful. I am sure their little spreadsheets were very impressive. But one of them caught my attention, mostly because she was even smaller than the others. Riley Chen, according to her identification badge, maybe 5.5 feet tall, probably weighed less than my left leg, with dark hair pulled back in some kind of tail, and these sharp dark eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. She had this way of moving quick and precise, like she was constantly calculating distances and angles. Weird, but whatever. Humans were weird. The orientation meeting was exactly as boring as I expected. Tremik droned on about cooperation, mutual respect, cultural sensitivity, blah blah blah. I watched the humans instead, studying their reactions. Most of them seemed nervous, which made sense. They were surrounded by species that could literally tear them apart without breaking a sweat. The Krovaxi alone had 5 representatives in that room, not counting me. Then there were the Thurians, the Morak workers, even a couple of Grelt engineers, all of them bigger, stronger, more durable than these soft little primates. Riley Chen, though, she sat there taking notes on her datapad, completely calm, occasionally asking questions that were actually intelligent. She wanted to know about load-bearing limits on the older docking clamps, about atmospheric pressure variations in different cargo bays, about emergency protocol response times, technical stuff, useful stuff. I almost started to think she might not be completely useless. The first week went fine, relatively speaking. The humans kept to themselves mostly, worked their stations, did their jobs. They were punctual, efficient, and irritatingly good at finding inefficiencies in our systems. Riley Chen turned out to be some kind of specialist in high-risk cargo management, which meant she was constantly in and out of the more dangerous sections of the station. She never complained, never hesitated, just did the work. But here is the thing about Krovaxi culture. We value strength, yes, but we also value discipline, order, structure. When someone steps out of line, when someone disrupts the hierarchy, when someone shows disrespect to the established power structure, we correct them, physically, if necessary. It is not cruel, it is educational, a firm grip, a reminder of who is stronger, who is in charge. Everyone understands this, everyone accepts this. Or so I thought. The humans had been on station for exactly 9 days when it happened. 9 days of watching them scurry around, doing their jobs, staying mostly out of trouble. 9 days of my natural Krovaxi superiority going unchallenged, unquestioned. 9 days assuming I understood exactly what these creatures were capable of. I was so wrong. And it all started with a morning briefing, a minor scheduling conflict, and Riley Chen walking through the door 8 minutes late. 8 minutes that changed everything I thought I knew about humans. The morning briefing started at 0800 hours sharp. Everyone knew this. Everyone. It was not a suggestion, not a guideline. It was mandatory attendance for all cargo coordination personnel. I stood at the front of the briefing room, datapad in hand, watching as my team filed in. Krovaxi, Thurians, Palexians, Morak, And yes, the humans. All of them on time. All of them ready. Except Riley Chen. 0801 hours. No Riley. 0803 hours. Still no Riley. I felt my mandibles click together in irritation. The other humans were exchanging these quick little glances, nervous energy radiating off them like heat from a reactor core. They knew she was late, and they knew I was not happy about it. 0805 hours. I started the briefing anyway, going through the daily cargo schedules, the maintenance updates, the safety protocols, but part of my attention stayed fixed on that door waiting. 0808 hours. The door finally slid open. Riley Chen walked in, calm as anything, like she had not just kept an entire briefing waiting. She was not running, not hurrying, just walking at her normal pace with that same focused expression she always wore. She had a data pad tucked under one arm and what looked like equipment grease on her left sleeve. I stopped mid-sentence. The entire room went quiet. Every eye, every optical sensor, every sensory organ turned toward her. She looked around, seemed to realize she had interrupted something, and had the audacity to just nod slightly and move toward an empty seat in the back. Oh no. No. That was not how this worked. In Kovacsy culture, lateness is disrespect, disruption is challenge, and challenge must be answered immediately, decisively, physically. You do not let subordinates think they can just waltz in whenever they feel like it. You teach them. You remind them of their place in the hierarchy. A firm grip on the arm, a pull to make them stumble, a demonstration of superior strength, not harm, just correction, just education. I had done this hundreds of times, with younger Kovacsy, who got too cocky, with Palaxians who needed reminding of who was in charge, even with Thurians who thought their size meant they could ignore protocol. A quick physical correction, a moment of dominance assertion, problem solved, respect restored. So I moved. 3 long strides across the briefing room. Riley had just reached for the back of a chair, probably about to sit down, when I came up behind her. I could see the other humans tense up, could see Jack Rodriguez, their security chief, start to rise from his seat, but it was too late. I was already in motion. My hand shot out, fingers closing around Riley's upper arm. Not hard enough to bruise, not violent, just firm, controlling. The classic Kovacsy correction grip. I started to turn her around, started to pull her off balance the way I had done 1,000 times before. That was when everything went sideways. Riley did not stumble, did not yelp, did not resist in the clumsy, panicked way most smaller species did. Instead, she went completely still for maybe half a second, just long enough for me to register that something felt wrong. Her arm under my grip felt different than I expected. Not soft, not weak, coiled. I do not even know how to describe what happened next. One moment I had control of the situation. The next moment the entire world tilted. There was a twist, a step, a shift in weight distribution that defied physics as I understood it. My own grip became a liability. My own strength worked against me. And then I was looking at the ceiling. The impact with the floor knocked the air out of my respiratory system. My arm, the one that had been grabbing Riley, was now twisted behind my back at an angle that sent warning signals screaming through my neural network. Not broken, not quite, but absolutely definitely controlled. I could not move it, could not pull free, could not do anything except lie there on the cold metal floor, completely and utterly immobilized by a human who weighed maybe a quarter of what I did. Riley's knee was pressed against my back, her grip on my arm was unbreakable, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet, calm, and absolutely terrifying. Do not ever grab me again. The briefing room was silent. Not the regular kind of quiet where people are just listening or paying attention. This was the kind of silence that happens when everyone's brain simultaneously stops working because reality just did something impossible. I was still on the floor, still pinned, still completely unable to process what had just happened to me. My exoskeleton, which had protected me in 3 different combat situations and 2 bar fights, might as well have been decorative. My superior Kovacsy strength, the thing I had relied on my entire adult life, was completely useless. I tried to pull my arm free, tried to shift my weight, tried to do anything that might let me regain some dignity. Nothing. Riley's grip did not budge even a millimeter. It was like my arm was locked in a mechanical vice. I stopped struggling. "Let me explain something," Riley said, and her voice was still that same calm, professional tone she used when discussing cargo manifests, like she pinned supervisors to the floor every day before breakfast. "On Earth, We have a concept called personal boundaries. When someone touches another person without permission, especially in an aggressive or controlling manner, that is called assault. We take it very seriously. I managed to turn my head just enough to see the rest of the room. The other humans were all sitting very, very still, but I could see it. The corners of their mouths twitching, eyes crinkling, shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. Jack Rodriguez had his hand over his face, but I could see his chest moving with silent chuckles. They were not surprised. Not even a little bit. They were trying not to laugh. The non-human species, though, completely different story. Cormac, a Thurian who stood nearly 9 feet tall and could bend steel bars, had his mouth hanging open in what I recognized as his species' version of total shock. 2 Palexians were leaning forward in their seats, optical sensors wide. Even the Morik workers, who rarely showed any emotion at all, had stopped their constant fidgeting and were staring. "What?" I managed to croak out, my voice muffled against the floor. "What did you do to me?" "Basic joint lock and takedown," Riley said, like she was explaining how to file a requisition form. "Human self-defense technique. Specifically, this is a variation of a wrist lock combined with a leg sweep. You provided the momentum, I just redirected it. Physics. Really. Leverage. Angles. Body mechanics. We learn this stuff when we are teenagers. Teenagers. She learned how to do this as a teenager. But I am stronger than you," I said, and I hated how weak my voice sounded, how confused, how completely lost. "I am Krovaxi. You are human. This should not be possible." I felt her shift slightly, adjusting her position. The pressure on my arm eased just a fraction, enough that the warning signals from my nervous system dropped from screaming to merely yelling. "Strength matters," Riley said, and I could hear something in her voice now. Not anger. Exactly. More like patience mixed with exasperation. Like she had explained this before and was tired of having to repeat it. But technique matters more. You grabbed me with force but no skill, no understanding of leverage points, joint manipulation or weight distribution. You assumed your physical advantages would be enough. They were not. Jack Rodriguez finally spoke up from across the room, his voice thick with barely controlled amusement. "Vex Thor, buddy. Let me give you some context here. Riley was a competitive martial artist for 8 years. She has black belts in 3 different disciplines. She has trained with military special forces units. That little move she just pulled, that is probably the gentlest thing she knows how to do." "Very gentle," one of the other humans added, a woman named Christina Park. She was grinning now, not even trying to hide it anymore. "She could have dislocated your shoulder, could have broken your elbow, could have put you to sleep with a blood choke. Instead, she just put you on the floor and hurt your pride." "My pride?" "Yes. That was definitely hurt. Shattered. Actually. Obliterated. Ground into dust and scattered across the station. Most humans learn some form of self-defense." Another human chimed in, a maintenance tech named David Torres. "It is part of our culture. When you grow up as one of the weaker species on your own planet, surrounded by predators that can kill you in seconds, you learn to fight smart instead of fighting strong. We have been doing this for thousands of years." Riley finally released my arm and stood up, stepping back to give me space. I lay there for another few seconds running diagnostics on my limbs, making sure nothing was actually damaged. Everything worked. Everything moved. I was fine physically, emotionally, psychologically. Those were going to take longer to repair. She had taken down a Krovaxi supervisor in approximately 3 seconds, and she looked like she had just finished sorting files. "Are we clear?" Riley asked, meeting my eyes with that steady, unflinching gaze. "About the personal boundaries thing?" I nodded. "What else could I do?" "Good," she said. Then to the entire room she added, "Sorry I was late. There was a coolant leak in Bay 7. I stopped to help the repair crew. Won't happen again." She sat down, opened her datapad and looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to continue the briefing. Like nothing had happened. Like she had not just completely rearranged my understanding of the universe. I tried to continue the briefing. I really did. But my voice kept cracking. My hands were shaking, and every single person in that room was looking at me differently now. Not with respect. Not with fear. With something worse. Pity. And in the case of the humans, barely suppressed entertainment. 5 minutes later, station security arrived. 2 grilled officers, all 4 of their arms carrying scanners and documentation tablets, shuffled into the briefing room. The larger one, Senior Officer Thixiel, looked around with his compound eyes and sighed in that rattling way Grelts do when they are already tired of whatever situation they have walked into. We received an automated alert, Vexel said, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into flat, bureaucratic standard. Physical altercation detected in this sector. Someone want to explain what happened? I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. What was I supposed to say? That I had grabbed a subordinate to teach her a lesson and ended up eating floor tile. Jack Rodriguez stood up, saving me from my humiliation. For the moment, Officer Thexel, I can explain. Supervisor Vexthor made unwanted physical contact with one of my team members. She defended herself. No injuries, no damage to station property, just a cultural misunderstanding that has now been resolved. Thexel's eyes swiveled toward me. Is this accurate, Supervisor? I nodded. Mute. We will need to review the security footage, the other Grelt officer said, already tapping at her datapad. Standard protocol for any physical incident involving cross-species interaction. Oh no. Oh no. The security footage. It took them approximately 90 seconds to pull up the recording, another 30 seconds to watch it. I saw Thexel's mandibles twitch in what I had learned was Grelt amusement. His partner made a sound like air escaping from a damaged seal. Laughter. She was laughing. That was, Thexel said carefully, impressively fast. I will need to file this under self-defense, justified response to unwanted contact. Supervisor Vexthor, you are fortunate she exercised restraint. Under station regulations she would have been within her rights to respond with significantly more force. The footage, of course, did not stay confidential. By lunch half the station had seen it. By dinner the other half had too. I could not walk through a corridor without seeing beings pull up their datapads, watch the clip and then look at me with those knowing eyes. A Krovaxi contingent was the worst. My own people, watching one of their supervisors get dropped by a human barely half his size. The shame was suffocating. I was hiding in my office, seriously considering requesting a transfer to literally anywhere else in the galaxy, when Jack Rodriguez knocked on my door. Can I come in? He asked, not waiting for an answer before stepping inside. He was a big human, bigger than most of them, with gray hair and these intense blue eyes that had probably seen things I could not imagine. We need to talk. I do not want to talk, I said, not looking up from my desk. I want to dissolve into my component molecules and drift away into space. Jack actually laughed at that. Yeah, I bet. But here is the thing, Vexthor. You are not the first to learn this lesson, and you will not be the last. So let me save you some pain and explain a few things about humans that apparently nobody bothered to mention during your orientation. He sat down without being invited, which somehow felt appropriate. I was in no position to enforce protocol anymore. First, personal space and consent. Big deal for humans. Huge. You do not touch us without permission, especially not in an aggressive way. Our laws about this are strict. Our culture around it is even stricter. What you did back there, on Earth in many jurisdictions, that would be assault, criminal charges, prison time. I felt my stomach drop. I was just trying to enforce discipline. I know, different culture, different rules, but here is what you need to understand. Humans are not just fragile primates who got lucky with technology. We evolved on a death world. Everything on Earth was trying to kill us. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans. We survived by being adaptable, creative, and yes, dangerous when we needed to be. Jack pulled up his datapad and started showing me files. Military records, combat statistics, historical documentation. We have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. Not just wars, constant, brutal, innovative warfare. We developed hundreds of different martial arts systems across dozens of cultures. Hand-to-hand combat, weapons training, tactical strategy. By the time a human reaches adulthood, most of them have at least basic self-defense training. Some, like Riley, have advanced training that can make them incredibly dangerous despite their size. He pulled up a video. Human soldiers, training in something called close quarters combat. They moved like Riley had moved, fast, precise, turning opponents' strength against them. The average human may look weak compared to you, Jack continued, but we make up for it with technique, aggression, and a truly unfortunate tendency toward violence when threatened. Riley went easy on you. She could have broken bones, could have rendered you unconscious, could have done permanent damage. She chose not to. Remember that. We heard what happened, Venta said, her voice sympathetic. We wanted to share our experiences, so you do not feel quite so alone in your humiliation. Over the next hour I heard stories. Vexil had tried to physically move a human technician out of his way during an emergency. He ended up pinned against a wall with a tool pressed against his throat until he apologized. Skrit had attempted to intimidate a human negotiator by looming over them. The human had smiled, told a joke about something called a Napoleon complex, and then proceeded to out-negotiate Skrit so badly that his company lost their contract. Vintha had grabbed a human administrator's shoulder during an argument and found herself on the receiving end of a formal complaint, a disciplinary hearing, and mandatory cultural sensitivity training. The point is, Vexil said, humans are not what they appear to be. They look soft. They look weak, but they are survivors from a planet that actively tried to kill them for millions of years. They are dangerous in ways we do not expect, and they absolutely will not tolerate being treated as lesser beings just because they are smaller. By the end of the day, the Krovaxi Diplomatic Corps had sent out an official memo to all Krovaxi personnel on the station. New protocols for interacting with humans. Do not assume physical superiority. Do not make unwanted physical contact. Do not underestimate their combat capability. Treat them as equals, not as subordinates. It was humbling, humiliating, and absolutely necessary. I had learned my lesson. The hard way, the painful way, the way that would be recorded and shared across the station for months to come. Humans were not weak. They were terrifying. And I had been an idiot to think otherwise. The formal meeting was scheduled for 3 days after what I had started calling the incident in my head. Everyone else on the station just called it that time Vex Tower got wrecked by the tiny human. The video had been viewed over 15,000 times. Someone had even added music to it. Humiliating did not begin to cover it. The conference room was neutral territory, one of the diplomatic spaces designed for cross-species negotiations. The Krovaxi delegation sat on one side of the table. 4 of us, including our senior administrator, war leader Caxden, who had flown in specifically for this meeting. That should tell you how serious this had become. The humans sat across from us, all 12 of them, with Jack Rodriguez and Riley Chen positioned at the center. Caxden was old-school Krovaxi, scarred exoskeleton, military decorations, 3 tours of combat duty in the Outer Rim conflicts. He did not tolerate weakness, did not accept excuses, and absolutely did not appreciate his people being made to look foolish in front of other species. He looked at me with those hard black eyes and I wanted to sink through the floor. Supervisor Vextor, he said, his voice carrying that particular tone of disappointment that was somehow worse than anger. You will explain to our human colleagues what occurred, why it occurred, and what you have learned from this experience. This was it. The formal humiliation. I stood up, my legs feeling weak, and faced the human delegation. 3 days ago I began, my voice steadier than I expected. I committed an act of physical aggression against Specialist Riley Chen. I grabbed her arm without her consent, intending to assert dominance and enforce what I believed was proper hierarchical discipline. This was wrong. It was a violation of her personal boundaries, a misapplication of Krovaxi cultural practices in a cross-species environment, and a fundamental failure to respect her as an equal member of this station's personnel. I paused, forcing myself to look directly at Riley. She sat there, hands folded on the table, expression neutral, professional. I apologize, Specialist Chen. My actions were inappropriate, disrespectful, and dangerous. I made assumptions about your capabilities based on your physical appearance. Those assumptions were incorrect. You defended yourself appropriately and with considerable restraint. I am grateful you chose not to cause me permanent injury, which you clearly could have done. The words tasted like ash, but they were true, every single one of them. Riley nodded slowly. I accept your apology, Supervisor Vextar, but I want to be very clear about something. This was not about proving I could beat you in a fight. This was about consent and respect. You did not have permission to touch me. On Earth, what you did would be considered assault. The fact that I can defend myself does not make it acceptable. The fact that you are stronger than most humans does not give you the right to put your hands on anyone without their agreement. Jack Rodriguez leaned forward. We understand that Krovaxi culture operates differently. Physical contact as a form of hierarchy enforcement is normal for you, but humans have different cultural values, different laws, different boundaries. If we are going to work together effectively, those differences need to be respected. Cox then rumbled his agreement. We acknowledge this. The Crovaxi Diplomatic Corps has already begun revising our cultural training materials. All Crovaxi personnel working in cross-species environments will receive mandatory education on human social customs, particularly regarding physical contact and personal space. This incident has revealed a significant gap in our understanding. Christina Park, one of the human engineers, spoke up. It goes both ways. We need to understand your cultural practices too, not to accept unwanted physical contact, but to recognize when cultural differences might lead to misunderstandings before they escalate. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. Protocols were established, guidelines were written, both sides agreed to regular cultural exchange sessions, cross-training on communication styles, and clear procedures for addressing future conflicts. It was professional, productive, and painfully necessary. As the meeting was wrapping up, Jack Rodriguez pulled up a file on the central display. I felt something crack inside my chest. She had been late because she was saving Crovaxi lives, my people, and I had grabbed her, tried to humiliate her, treated her like an insubordinate child who needed to be taught a lesson. The workers you saved, Caxton said quietly, were Thenric and Vixit. Thenric is my nephew. The medical report says without immediate intervention they would have suffered permanent neural damage. You saved them. Specialist Chen. Riley looked uncomfortable with the attention. I just did what anyone would do. They needed help. I was there. Simple as that. But it was not simple. Nothing about humans was simple. Over the following weeks, things changed. Not overnight but gradually. The Crovaxi on the station started watching the humans differently, not with dismissal or contempt but with caution and grudgingly respect. We learned their combat capabilities were not theoretical. We learned their sense of loyalty extended beyond their own species. We learned that strength came in forms we had not previously recognized. I learned the most of all. I learned that Riley Chen could calculate cargo trajectories in her head faster than most computers. I learned that she volunteered for the most dangerous assignments because she trusted her training to keep her safe. I learned that she had a dry sense of humor, that she was unfailingly polite even to people who did not deserve it, and that she genuinely enjoyed solving complex logistical problems. I learned that humans were not weak. They were not fragile. They were survivors, fighters, and innovators who had clawed their way up from a hostile planet through intelligence, adaptability, and a stubborn refusal to give up. Mostly, I learned that assumptions are dangerous, stereotypes are foolish, and the universe is full of surprises that will put you flat on your back if you are not paying attention. 3 months after the incident, I was assigned to co-lead a project with Riley. My first reaction was panic. My second was resignation. My third, surprisingly, was curiosity. We worked well together. She taught me human problem-solving methods. I taught her Crovaxi efficiency protocols. We developed a mutual respect built on competence, not physical dominance. I was famous, just not in the way I had ever wanted to be. But you know what? I survived. I adapted. I learned, just like humans do. And if there is one piece of advice I can give to anyone working with humans for the first time, it is this. Never assume you understand them until they have surprised you, because they will surprise you. They always do, usually when you are least prepared for it, and almost always in ways that leave you reevaluating everything you thought you knew about strength, courage, and what it means to be dangerous. Riley Chen taught me that lesson in under 10 seconds. Best education I ever received, even if my pride never fully recovered.